Wonderful. Thank you very much, Russell. I hope you enjoyed the two peer-to-peer learning exchange sessions that we had just before the break. I could see that they were well attended, and even this session, I see we are 65, 64 participants. I am not surprised that we are this many, because for our final session of the day, I'd like to introduce you to our next facilitator and also game show host, Melissa. Now, I know some of you already observed this morning in the chat, Melissa saying, join me for the game in the afternoon. So that time has finally come. But Melissa, for those of you who are not aware, she's been with the Alliance, CHS Alliance, in various different roles since 2019. And is currently working on how organizational culture actually influences performance against the core humanitarian standard. But you might also know her from the Embodied Change podcast, which is available on all standard podcasting platforms. And I actually spoke with her last week on the podcast in her most recent episode. So if you've not listened to that yet, please do that. But in the meantime, don't listen to it now, because right now we're going into the game. So in the meantime, Melissa, over to you. Take us away.
Thank you so much, Faye. Thank you to everyone who's coming in. I'm really curious as you log in, if you could take a moment and think about why you might be interested in why we should change organizations from within and create accountable cultures. And just a plug to Faye, in our conversation, in our Embodying Change podcast episode, she talks about mental models that might be holding some of us back from fully implementing the core humanitarian standard. It gets at some of the tricky issues that we've been talking about with regard to really supporting local leadership, with really engaging affected populations, with really seeing inclusion and diversity. So I'm going to put a link here in the chat to that episode, and I encourage you to listen to it later. Now, on to the fun. Today, we're going to be looking at and talking through Zoom. And I want to give you a little tip that you could use for other Zoom meetings later. In the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, if you hover on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little button. It says view, or maybe in your language, if you have it in a different language, it says something else, but there's a little tiny grid with 9 blocks. If you touch on that grid, you see speaker or gallery. So you can actually change what you're seeing on the screen. You can look just at us, myself as a speaker and our sign language interpreter, or you can switch down to gallery. You can see all of our faces. And I'd encourage you, if you don't mind, to share your video so we can connect to each other. If you have a bad internet connection or you're not comfortable, you haven't gotten dressed yet today, that's no problem. You don't have to share your video, but we love to see that. So just so you know, you can also see next to that view sign, you can actually move the line. So you can see where the chat bar is, you can make it smaller, you can pull it over, so then you can see more people on your screen. So that's just a bit of housekeeping. In the next 90 minutes, we want to drive home the key message. Accountability to affected people requires a whole of organization approach. The HAR 2022 Accountability Manifesto includes accountable cultures as one of the 4 key takeaways. And I caught at least a dozen quotes yesterday in the CHS exchange that underscore this point. So, for example, UNHCR's Katie Bennett Sattler said there's a lot of connection with culture of the organization. If we're not role modeling the right behaviors and talking about consequences, we're not fostering the right culture. Culture is, this is how we do things around here. Tamara Zabin said the cycle of violence starts inside our offices. Let's protect our staff from sexual assault and bullying. Smruti Patel said accountability is the responsibility of all, including leaders. If it's only the job of AAP officers, it becomes someone else's responsibility. Meg Sattler said, we need a few rebels, a few rule breakers at the top, creative leadership, pushing back on the bureaucracy. Fernanda Baumhart said, the participation revolution will only happen with the leadership revolution. Colleen Rapnoe said, PSEAH should be everyone's business, not just a niche within an organization. As long as it remains an expert issue, we're going to fail in the approach to accountability. Yagana talked about perfectionism, turning aid into a job instead of immediate help offered during times of distress. Regina Antikisa, we know her as Nanette, she said, are you willing to make the change? It's a change of mindset. Vivian Lucia Fluck said, change in leadership, giving up power and internal accountability will be important for change. Uwe Kora said, modeling AAP and behaviors, attitudes, conversations, etc. There's a big gap in the system, and without that, systems are hollow shells. The last two quotes, Edith Iloginuma said, internal accountability is equally important, and Tanya Wood, director of CHS Alliance, said, we should own our pushiness and our privilege. We need to be conscious of it. So to bring that into today's session, we want to have three parts of our session. We're going to have, first part, an interactive discussion with one of the CHS Alliance members on how they look at the whole of organizational approach, World Vision. In part two, we're going to play a game, a CHS culture game. It's comprised of 20 questions, and it will be played by two CHS Alliance members, Concern Worldwide and the Girardeau Foundation. And you can play along too. We're really curious to see how this plays out. And the third part of our hour and a half together is ending with a reflection. What did we learn in our time together? So without further ado, I'd like to invite Russell and his team to bring on the screen with pinning it, our three World Vision participants. We have Justin Byworth, Anne-Marie Connor, and Alicia Nissan. Welcome. Excellent, I see you. Okay, fantastic. So before we dive into our questions on the whole of organization approach, do you mind to each tell us something about you, maybe something fun that people might not know about you? I'll go in alphabetical order. How about you, Justin? Why don't you introduce yourself?
It's hard to find something fun when you're a boring middle-aged, pale male and stale member of the panel, you know, so. But let me say, I've been with World Vision for like nearly 35 years, would you believe? But last year, in fact, this year, I had a big personal development challenge because the board of World Vision International came to my hometown, which is Oxford in the UK. And I had a job to do for the day, which was to give them a tour. So I became tour guide of Oxford. So now my job is secure. When I'm done with leading World Vision's humanitarian work, I'm going to become a tour guide for Oxford. So anyone who's visiting Oxford, in Google Justin Byworth, find me. I can be your tour guide anytime. There's some great places here and nice pubs as well, and bookshops, great bookshops, good music. You know, so yeah, I'm your Oxford tour guide if you need one.
Oh, sign me up. Thank you so much. Good to know. How about you, Anne-Marie Connor?
Hi, Melissa. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Building on what Justin has just said, I recently moved from Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo to Vancouver, British Columbia, and I am working my way through all of Vancouver's wonderful noodle and soup dumpling shops. So happy to host anyone and bring you to some great Asian food locations in Vancouver, Canada.
Wow, so we'll go to Oxford and then we'll have some noodles in Vancouver. Fantastic. And Alicia, what about you?
Well, I'm based in the south of France, so if we want to complete the tour, then you're all welcome here in Marseille. I have just finished 4 years as the Senior Director of Safeguarding at World Vision International, and now I'm the Director of Accountability and Transparency, so really thrilled to participate and listen in these days. And fun fact is we just got home from our 5-year wedding anniversary. So that's part of why I was bouncing on the video as we arrived, but now I'm home safe and sound and thrilled to be here with all of you today.
Wow, congratulations to you and thanks for joining us. It must be a soft landing to come from your vacation celebration to our game. Thank you so much. Alicia, I would like to actually start with you. Why do you think a whole of organization approach is required if we want to ensure accountability to affected populations? And how would you describe World Vision International's approach?
Yeah, thank you. Whether it's accountability or safeguarding or PSEA, as many other members have said in the previous days, Melissa, when you were giving a roundup just now of what we've heard leading up to today, we know that these issues are about how we as organizations position ourselves relative to the stakeholders around us. So who is it who is making decisions around how we engage with communities, around what programming we take on, and how we adapt and contextualize? Who is the one who's pulling those strings? Are we listening and taking action on what we hear from communities? Are we balancing that with the expectations of the donors who ultimately have the power to decide what programming we can or cannot do in the future? One of the ways we're looking as World Vision around accountability to external stakeholders. So I'm looking exclusively now at children and communities and donors and standards bodies like CHS Alliance or regulators, is how we fit this thinking into 3 buckets: ethics, engagement, and the standards that we're holding ourselves accountable to. We want to turn around some of this discourse where our acts of service look first to communities and then to the donors who are supporting us to fulfill our commitments that we've made. So one of the ways that we're challenging some of those paradigms is within our projects themselves, listening to children, having them be, we are a child-focused organization at World Vision, and we want to recognize that who children are today will influence the leaders, community members, society that they become in the future. So one of the things I wanted to bring into today is how do we look at our own lexicon, our vocabulary, and change it to be more reflective of the world we want to become. The term downward accountability is problematic itself. So how do we begin to reflect on ourselves, looking at us as members? And one of the questions we're going to talk about later is how we as members can learn from each other. So in terms of the whole of organization approach, it starts with that positioning. Right, of how do we look at the people we are serving, whether that be children, communities, partners, or donors. And then within the organization, from the top, from the field, and everywhere that happens in between in management, where do those things meet and where do we have a healthy tension between them? And how can that healthy tension help us to be better learners along the way? I'll draw from PSEA, which at World Vision, we look through a lens of safeguarding. For us, PSEA isn't in itself good enough. That looks, of course, at the most serious, most pervasive harm which can occur. But we, again, as a child-focused organization, know that we hold a lot of power in our work with children and parents and families. And so we need to look broader at the picture of harm and the harm that we can do within a community if we're not mitigating the risks that we create through our presence. Anne-Marie is going to talk about shortly how our president, Andrew Morley, is currently the IASC champion for PSEA. But what I want to talk about is how he, as our president, has played a really critical role in these last few years of his presidency in setting the tone right from the top, so that no one can ever question whether or not this matters to World Vision. It's one of his topmost priorities. He talks about it at any opportunity or when we ask him to. So there's already that standard set from the top. Then we need to have, as everyone's talked about, that culture. How are we building culture? One of the ways that we've done that is through a week that was dedicated to safeguarding. And even though the term safeguarding has had a lot of attention in these last few years, it cuts across. It cuts across accountability, it cuts across staff well-being, it cuts across programming and doing no harm in our programming principles. So that week was an opportunity at very local level to national level and international level, everyone a little bit each day to talk about different themes as they relate to safeguarding, PSEA, and the culture we want to have as World Vision and the values that sit behind it. At the risk of repeating what many of our peers have said, it's only when all of us take on our piece of safeguarding or PSEA or accountability, the principles of listening, that it truly becomes a part of our culture. So just to reinforce everyone who said that before, but we also know that sometimes saying that can get lost. What does that mean meaningfully for me as a staff member, maybe as a frontline staff member, to be doing accountability or to be doing PSEA? That's where us as AAP or accountability or safeguarding or other types of leaders can help our peers to recognize how they, both as an individual, as a staff member or affiliate, have a role, but also in their specific department can reflect on this question. And we've built that into annual assessments that take place in all of our offices of just asking the question, how do you as a recruitment professional need to uphold safeguarding or PSEA? How do you as a finance assistant need to do it? What are some cues within your role that you can take on that only you are positioned to do, given who you are in the organization? While one area that's emerging for us at World Vision, and Justin and I have just recently talked about this, is how we're seeing a blend between our humanitarian and response work and our development work. In the past, these two programs were quite distinct from one another. We would have 10 to 15-year-long development programs out in the most rural parts of the world where governments or other agencies struggled to reach communities. But now those communities are being hit by climate change, conflict, migration of peoples. And so that division doesn't exist the way that it used to. So how can we learn between what's happening in our humanitarian responses to better inform our development programmings and vice versa, particularly when it comes to listening to our frontline staff and the communities around having short-term life-saving and immediate needs, as well as long-term programming for child and community well-being.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I want to underscore this idea of having healthy tension. It came out very strongly in our Embodying Change episode with Gaia Gamza Hamnada, a doctor at WHO, who's been working to address misconduct there. She's saying, unless you have this tension in a process to address some of the power issues, some of the culture issues, you're not going to really get to a lasting change. And asking the question, this came up yesterday with David DiGiovanna, giving a donor perspective on participation revolution. Are donors asking the question, are we prioritizing these issues? I'd like to turn now to Justin. Justin, we hear a lot about the CHS verification system and the scheme, and it does take some time, but there's a lot of value that comes through that. So I'd be curious, given your recent CHS verification experience, how do you think it helped to reinforce a whole of organization approach?
Melissa, thank you. And I'll build actually off Alicia, one of your last comments. So I guess I'll just say a little bit about 3 steps of the verification process: the decision to go ahead with it, the going through it, and then the following up, the implementation since the verification, because of course we have a report from that identifies some learning things to follow up. So I guess just to say, the decision itself was not a straightforward one. World Vision is probably many people on this call will know, we're a complex, large, federated, global, international organization with different kinds of functions and different types of organizations. So, and actually I think Tanya will know this and others as well, that I think we are the largest family that's gone through that, the largest kind of family organisation that's gone through that process. So, and the costs are not insubstantial. I noticed a couple of HQI colleagues on there, but obviously the costs of going through that are not insubstantial. So we needed to build a consensus even before we decided to verify. And obviously the donors you just referred to, the donors actually putting pressure and encouragement on us to do that is a good thing in my view. And also we talk to our peers actually, and I would encourage, as we look at how we can how we can encourage each other, is talking to our peers. I lead, I'm our humanitarian director. I talk to my peers in several organizations that have been through it. What was it like? How do you make then? What we did is we actually had a discussion amongst our team. What do we want to come out of this? And we also needed to raise money, actually, to raise the funds enough to cover it. But we had a discussion, what do we want from this process? What is the aim for us organisationally? And really what we decided was the heart of the, apologies if this is the wrong terminology, but of the core humanitarian standard, the wonderful diagram that I always call the flower, the CHS flower, but has right in the middle of it, accountability to communities and people affected by crisis. The number one thing we want to do is learn how we can be better, how we can better put that at the heart. So we came with a kind of a desire to make the verification process not just a tick box, not just because we required it, but actually to something that we will be open and we will be learning through. Now then what we did is we made sure, because the process includes organizational assessments of policies and interviews with senior leaders across the organization in the range, we basically were very intentional in orienting, bringing along those people, our chief finance officer, our chief people officer, our chief executive officer, that Elisa referred to, Andrew, and a whole host of other people, chief audit officer, but also our fundraising offices and our field offices. And in fact, my colleague Randini, who paid tribute to, she did the lion's share of the work on this. I think I saw her on the call earlier. Also bringing, as we worked out who was going to be selected in the sample, making sure that we came alongside our partners at country level and actually made sure, A, that they understood what this was for, and B, that we supported them, including financially, so that we weren't a drag on their resources as well. So I think there was a lot of work to get everyone on board. So that work was necessary. But what we did is we really reinforced that. People may be surprised on here, but I can tell you, World Vision, I think, has 37,000 staff. If I was to guess how many people knew what CHS stood for or what the core humanitarian standard was at its 9 commitments, I don't think we'd have 1,000 that would know before this. So, and maybe other organizations are better placed than that. But so actually this is an opportunity to say this is our one standard that, as a humanitarian organization, for that part of our work, we hold ourselves to this. There's loads of other things, there's loads of other requirements, we have loads of other systems and process, but this one is central and it's external to us. And we had interest even from our international board on this as well. We actually shared at the Audit and Risk Committee, who did a presentation on this there. So most of that was about raising the flag of the fact that this is not something, we don't mark our own homework here. And there's a separate organization that can help that and a separate standard. But then it's not just about the sector standard, an ombudsman or something. It's actually for the people that we serve, and that center of the so I would say that was the key. That was the key thing, I think, in coming through and setting up that process. And so we held lots of we had lots of meetings, we had calls like this one with different people on it. We did, I won't go into the detail, but I guess then I think that at the other end of the spectrum of that, then we got the report, and I won't comment on the content, but it's there on the HQI website. You can see it, and we had a lot of encouragement in a number of areas, and we had some challenges in some other areas, and that would be the same for all of us, I'm sure. But overall, we were encouraged, actually, and the fact that I can say honestly, the biggest thing is the fact that leadership. My boss said to me at the end of the year, when I was doing my own end of year performance review, how's the year gone? And I, mentioned it. He said, don't undersell the CHS verification. That was a flagship moment for the organization that we got that. And that was one of the people that probably didn't know what it was at the beginning of the process. So I think we've reinforced that. And now the challenge is to reinforce that through implementation. There's areas around environmental stewardship. There's areas around, I won't list all the areas that we've got, but we've got an action plan for this. And so the key thing now is to make sure the momentum changes. But in doing it, reinforce the fact that this is not about ticking a box or about a verification stamp of approval or about the benefits of doing that from a donor perspective or others. This is about the center of that circle of the standard itself. This is about the people that we serve and accountability to people affected by crisis in their communities. So we've got a long way to go, I'm sure, but yeah, I definitely think people know what CHS is now and they know why it is important, which is great.
Excellent, Justin. And that reinforces some of the messages we are hearing through the membership dialogue, which you'll be learning about tomorrow, some of the briefing on the final results there. Now, it's interesting, both Alicia and Justin have several times mentioned, I think he's your president, Andrew Morley. And that's why I'm going to turn now to Anne-Marie Connor, because Andrew Morley is currently serving a term as the IASC, that's Interagency Standing Committee champion of PSEAH, Preventing Sexual Exploitation, Abuse, and Harassment. And in that role, it's playing an important role sector-wide, and it's also offering an opportunity to World Vision International to reflect internally. So Anne-Marie, how has this term influenced World Vision internally and also influenced the sector's approach? Over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. In 2021, the IASC conducted an external review on PSEAH. And that external review identified the critical importance of a sustained focus on changing the culture of the humanitarian sector. And when World Vision took on the championship in February of 2022, we agreed with the IASC principles that one of our championship priorities would focus on culture change, specifically ensuring that the sector actively evidences a zero tolerance approach for inaction on SEA. Too often, humanitarians assume that abuse in the sector is not happening unless we have reports to the contrary. However, to drive culture change, what we have found is that we collectively need to recognize that, unfortunately, abuse is universal. It happens in every society, from the most to the least developed. And in times of war, displacement, disaster, the extreme gender and power imbalances between those that are receiving and providing aid make it extremely likely that it could occur in large humanitarian responses. Now, following on that, a key, though inadvertent, flaw in our approach to date has been a collective reliance on victims and survivors, overwhelmingly women, to drive accountability. Despite being some of the least powerful individuals in humanitarian contexts, we've expected them to not only survive abuse, but also report what they have experienced or witnessed. We know the Me Too, the A2 movements, and perhaps you in your personal experience, barriers to reporting are significant, and all the more so for the vulnerable among us. Acknowledging exploitation and abuse can lead to additional physical and emotional trauma and harm. And even in the most secure and survivor-friendly environments, the data shows globally that we have significant underreporting. So we know that reports represent only the tip of the iceberg, and that most cases of exploitation and abuse, like other forms of gender-based violence, go underreporting. So we must err as World Vision, as a sector, and assume that when we are not receiving reports, that in and of itself is a significant issue. That's important because it lifts the burden of triggering action, triggering accountability from victims and survivors, those least able to and most at risk, to us as humanitarian organizations, to leaders and staff. In 2021, World Vision conducted a lessons learned process to identify the strengths and areas for improvement in safeguarding and preventing sexual exploitation and abuse, particularly in programs located in fragile contexts or during emergency responses. This process brought together a cross-section of leaders and practitioners, and I want to focus on one key lesson, which we are now putting into practice in key locations with plans to expand. And that's how to increase reporting and better understand issues that might lead to underreporting in a particular context. So within our organization, leaders, accountability and monitoring and evaluations teams, our AAP colleagues, along with safeguarding specialists, are flagging instances of little or no reporting to determine whether the organization should conduct proactive targeted inquiries to detect and enable reporting of safeguarding violations.
Are you good? Are you good, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just saw something flash up and I wanted to make sure you could hear me properly.
We can hear you
Great.
loud and
Okay,
clear.
perfectly. We're identifying and collaborating with survivor-focused partners and service providers to conduct detection outreach and to enable communities to report safeguarding violations and to support managers to identify moments in the program cycle for prevention, detection, and discussion on safeguarding violations. We're working to implement regular spot checks during field visits. For example, by calling in test complaints to ensure systems are working, and by discussing with community leaders their understanding of SEA, appropriate humanitarian worker behavior, and how to report safeguarding and SEA violations. Moving forward, World Vision is changing the narrative internally. We're accepting that underreporting exists and implementing vigorous and proactive prevention and detection. These actions are key to establishing a culture of zero tolerance to inaction.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Now, I want to, cognizant of time, I want to throw out a question. Maybe, Alicia, maybe you have one, you can answer in one sentence. A lot of times when we're working on organizational culture, it seems to be an internal thing. And there are some people who say, let's just keep it internal. We want to work on it internally, and that's our own business. And we don't want to expose our, some people say, let's keep our own house in order. But what do you think CHS Alliance members could be doing together to support each other and the sector as a whole to transform organizational cultures that better meet the core humanitarian standard? Alicia, do you have one sentence?
Sure, there's 1,000 possibilities, but in one sentence, I would love to know how we can all embrace humility to recognize that as a sector, we have not done this well enough yet, and to be able to reach out, therefore, bilaterally between members, openly and honestly recognizing the gaps that exist within us as individual organizations, individual functions, and as a sector as a whole.
Thank you so much to our World Vision friends. We really appreciate you giving us a snapshot into your window of thinking here. So I want to say a big thank you to Justin, Alicia, and Anne-Marie Connor for your time with us today. And now we're going to turn to part 2 of our session, which is going to be a game. So I'd like to welcome two CHS Alliance members teams. I have asked these 2 organizations to come into the game because I held a membership dialogue with both, and I found both were extremely knowledgeable about the core humanitarian standard, number 1. Number 2, extremely passionate about sharing learning with others. So I'm going to change my gallery view to gallery so I could see your beautiful faces. You'll see that we have our team with the backgrounds. We have Concern Worldwide in green, and we have JDF, Jiridu Foundation in white. So welcome. If you want to, you can drag and drop the screens to cluster as you like. But before we start playing the game, I just want to get to a sense of who's on each organization's team. And alphabetically, I'll start with Concern. Would you like to introduce each of yourselves and maybe something fun about you? I see on my screen first, Carol. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. My name is Carol Morgan. I'm the International Program Director with Concern, and I have worked for Concern for quite some time in a number of different roles. I'm trying to think of something fun. I think I just go to my normal that I always go back to when I can't think of anything else. At one stage, I was a national ballroom champion quite some time ago, though, a very long time ago. I have 2 left feet now.
Wow. And so that was is there a particular dance style?
It was kind of ballroom dancing.
Wow, that is very
Dancing
cool.
with the Stars, yes.
Dancing with the Stars. That could be one of our activities at our next face-to-face gathering. We're keeping track of the hidden talents of our members. So thank you, Carol. Next, Durance, would you like to introduce yourself for your team?
Thank you, Melissa. My name is Durance Onyango. I am the Senior Manager for Monitoring, Evaluation, Accountability and Learning for Concern Worldwide in Kenya. And I'm happy to be here and just learn together with the rest of us who are strong on accountability and quality assurance. Yes, that's it from my end. Thank you.
Would you like to say something fun about yourself, Durance?
I was hoping I would escape that.
You thought I would forget.
I was hoping I would escape that. Let me see. It's a difficult question. Easy but difficult. Let me say I like eagles, and people wonder why I love them, but because they're so high, and that's what I love to do. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Durance. Kate, would you like to introduce yourself? Something fun?
I am Kate. I'm a desk officer with Concern. I've been with Concern, I think, for 16 years. I started off as a nutritionist out in the field. I hate the fun thing. I'm scared of flying, which isn't a great thing to be scared of in this line of work.
And unlike the eagle. But I think a lot of us can sympathize. Thank you, Kate. How about you, Mashumi?
Hello, this is Moushumi Sharmin. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm working as a gender coordinator, and I'm the safeguarding and PSA focal of Bangladesh, and also representing Engaging Men and Boys Alliance, Men Engage Alliance, and we are the secretariat. We are the steering committee member of this alliance, and also I'm the CF focal for Bangladesh. And yeah, I'm just thinking about the fun things, and it's not very easy. I'm just thinking and thinking, but you may pretty sure that I'm a funny person, but it needs some kind of audiences, friends, and some kind of, it's a matching of bat and ball, and you cannot do fun anytime. Though you are a funny person, so I'm not. I can't say anything about fun issues. But my children, they love me, and I'm always maybe something I can say which can create lovely moment and a loving moment also. So, but it's really tough to say any kind of fun things.
Well, you said many things very beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mashumi. And Rosalind, would you like to introduce yourself in something fun?
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to be here. I'm on the board of directors of Concern Worldwide, so sort of see things from a slightly different perspective and maybe more hands off, but really interested in the discussion so far. My fun fact, so I live in Ireland and I've recently started playing Gaelic football, which is our national sport. So that's a new experience for me. It's called Mothers and Others. So the mothers of the children who play now get together with some other people who maybe don't have children. So it's slightly older women playing together.
Ah, very nice. I like that. Mothers and Others. Beautiful. Now, since Rosalind, you're on the board of directors, I just wanted to flag in the chat, we have a new, we put a link to our new report, Governing Well, 5 questions governing boards should be asking their organizations. It's something that we find is really important in improving accountability.
Right,
Now over
thank
to JDF, Jury Du Foundation. Kingsley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Melissa. Good afternoon from Nigeria. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kingsley Okpabi, and I work for Jerry Do Foundation as the program manager. It's good to be here. One of the things that are fun about myself is that I love adventure, I love traveling, and then I love trying out new delicacies wherever I find myself. So I'm thinking of trying Anne's Maria's offer because she talked about that earlier. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now over to you, Sarah.
Okay, hi everyone. Hope we're doing well. My name is Jerry Sarah. I work with Jairedo Foundation as well. Fun fact about myself, like I had already mentioned earlier, is I connect with people easily. For Melissa, this is the second time I'm speaking with you on the screen, but I feel I've known you for like ages.
Yeah,
So,
we're like buddies.
That's something I'm good at. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry Sarah. And how about you, Aisha?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Aisha Abdullahi. I work with JDF as accountability assistant. One fun thing about me is I like to meet new people. I like chatting with people. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I like meeting new people too.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Seth, who we saw earlier in the CHS Exchange. Would you like to wrap up the introductions and something fun about yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Melissa. And hi, everybody. I am Seth, as said earlier, and I am the meal manager for Jarido Foundation Nigeria. And something fun about me is that somehow I grew older, but I did not grow up. So I love to play in everything I do. I love to bring, I just like to have fun. I believe that learning is more exciting when you put in some playing and ease off the tension. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There's a quote by Plato. He said, "You can learn more about a person in an hour of play than you can from a lifetime of conversation." So we'll see how much more we can learn about each of you in less than an hour. We're going to now play a game. It's like 20 questions. The questions are based on findings from CHS Alliance research that we've done through examples from the Working Well report, from the Leading Well report, a lot from the Governing Well report. We're going to be playing for the two teams, Concern and JDF, but everyone I encourage to go on to Slido. You see, you can take your phone, you can do the QR code, you can get on. We're first going to ask the teams the questions. They're going to take turns answering questions one by one. Each correctly answered question is 1 point, but also the audience can answer the question on Slido, and we'll be seeing who's leading in the leaderboard. We'll be showing after the 10th question and the 20th question. Sharina Corfield has kindly agreed, since she's got the Harlaunch behind her, to help us keep score. Yes, and I've got a heads or tails. So I'd like to ask Carol, Carol and Seth, would you like to choose heads or tails to see who goes first?
Yeah, heads or tails is good. Can I choose?
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Seth.
no. I think ladies first. That is for like.
Okay, Carol can choose.
Okay, I go tails.
Tails.
Okay.
Oh, foul play. I dropped it. Let's try it again. Okay, it's tails. So who has chosen tails?
Carol.
Carol,
Yeah.
okay. So let's go, we'll start with Concern Worldwide. We're going to go to question number 1. Russell, can you pull up question number 1? All right. Accountability is the process of using what responsibly? Accounting skills, calories, power, or social media? take some time amongst your team, Concern, to discuss what you think, and then tell me your final answer.
I'm pretty sure it's probably power. What do the others think?
I would think so.
Assuming that you're mute. Unmute. I agree. It's power.
Yeah, power. Final answer. We'll do like a Who
Final
Wants to Be a
answer?
Millionaire. Final answer.
Okay,
Yes.
final answer for Concern is power. What does our audience say in the Slido? Power.
Yay.
What's the correct answer? The correct answer is power. Well done. 1 point to Concern. I think that we talked about this a lot in the CHS exchange, but this is really important. So the next question goes to JDF. What is power when we're talking about accountability? It came up a lot in the chat discussions here about who has power. Do affected people have power or not? What is power? Do you think it's energy, a huge Instagram following, size, or influence?
So, I think that in this context, I would go for influence.
I don't know, like these guys that have huge Instagram followers actually are very powerful.
Yeah, but again, it's about the level of influence. For me, I don't.
For me too, I think.
Yeah, I go with influence as well.
I think it's
Okay.
influence.
Then I go with the bandwagon. If you say influence, then let's go with influence, right?
All right.
All right, so you go with influence. That's your final answer?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, what does the audience think in the Slido? We see influence. Okay, let's see what the final answer is. Influence, excellent, 1 and 1.
Hey!
Well
I knew
done.
Yeah.
It's really, there are a lot of definitions of power. The longer one is influence over the behavior of others. But you can have other definitions as well, but this is the influence is really important. So let's go back to Concern for the third question. Who can actually influence behaviors in aid organizations? It came up in the chat. We were thinking about who has power. A lot of times we talk about donors have all the power. But if we look at this list, you have crisis affected people, staff, CEOs, board members, managers, auditors, donors, or all of the above. Concern team, why don't you talk amongst yourselves and decide what you'd like to suggest?
Well, yeah, I would say, what do you think? I think they can all.
I think all above, crisis affected people, crash staff, CEOs, who can influence
All of them,
behaviors
yes.
in and aid organizations, who can influence behaviors in and aid organizations.
Yeah, they probably have different levels of influence, but all would have some influence.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with
So
you.
we go for all the above. Final answer.
Final answer, all of the above. Excellent. Let's see what the audience voted. The audience said all of the above. Excellent. Let's see what the right answer was. All of the above. Excellent. Now, of course, there are nuances. We see some people have more or less influence depending on circumstances, but everyone can bring power to bear there if we talk about power as influence. Let's go to the next question to JDF. Aid organizations' governing boards could and should pay more attention to what? And this is based on the findings from our recent Governing Well project. Should they pay more attention to the menu of food that they get at their meetings, the stock market, performance against the standard, or the CEO's clothing choices?
I love food.
Yes, I think that food is quite important. But I would go for performance against the standard.
Performance against the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think performance against the standard should go, even though food is very tempting.
Is that your final answer?
Performance against the standard.
Okay, I think the audience agrees with you, at least in the chat. Let's go to the Slido results. Performance against the standard, yes. Let's go to the final answer. Absolutely. Now, that said, several of our governing board members that we interviewed talked about the importance of sharing food together to build relationships
Exactly.
and including with staff. But several have said that governing boards should be paying more attention to how well the organizations are doing and asking the questions on standards. So well done to everyone.
While eating good food.
And eating good food, yes.
Yeah.
Back to concern, the next question. Sexual misconduct, racist discrimination, bullying, and corruption are what? Unstoppable, best dealt with by separate departments, or abuses of power? What do you think?
Abuses of power.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah, I
that.
agree with that.
I agree. Yeah,
Is that your final answer?
that's our final
Yeah.
answer. Yes.
All right, I see Vargas in the chat. Oh yeah, several people in the chat are agreeing. How is the Slido result coming? Abuses of power, excellent. Let's see what the final answer is. Okay, very nice. So in the CHS Alliance blog, there are occasional blogs written. There's one by Alex Cole Hamilton, who said we really need to begin using power as a connector between all forms of misconduct. If we as organizations want to act with integrity, we have to see how these different things are connected, and they shouldn't be handled in silos. They should be seen in a comprehensive way. So yes, they're all abuses of power. Thank you so much. Let's go to the next question. What makes abuses of power less likely? So here you can choose all that apply. Leaders, they model appropriate behaviors. Governing board members, they take corrective actions. Cultures have open communication. We welcome and act upon complaints. There are clear and enforced consequences for abuses of power, or you have a full funding as an organization. What do you think applies in this case?
Yeah, so I think that leaders modeling appropriate behavior is very key. Governing board members, if they take corrective measures and actions, also helps to make abuse of power less likely. And open communication is very, very important. The more the open communication systems exist, the better you get proper feedback and you get the right information. And acting upon complaints. If complaints are not responded or acted upon, then at the end of the day, you find out that they altogether stop coming in, because there's no point complaining when nothing is being done about it. And when you have clear and enforced consequences, it also supports this process. Full funding. Kingsley, what do you think?
So I think in terms of full funding, I do not think that it has a role to play here to make abuse of power less likely, because again, funds has a way of it's a form of power on its own and makes people it gives people power. So I think that it should not be part of this. I think that the first to the first five, yes, the first five.
First five.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Agree.
what I would take. Full funding doesn't necessarily make reduces some forms of or abuse as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 1 to 5, option 1 to 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Yes.
Did everyone on your team have said something?
Yes. Agree.
Although, Melissa, it depends also on the angle you're looking at full funding. I really am trying to understand what is meant by full funding in the question.
Yes. So a lot of times we, even CHS Exchange yesterday talked about, Meg Sattler talked about one of the common explanation for why we don't have more effective accountability is because funding shortfalls. So an organization may have identified they need X amount of money to meet the needs, but they don't have the full funding.
Oh, Okay. So looking at it from that perspective, I really think that if there isn't full funding, then abuses of power might likely come in, because then you have less resources to go around. And then when you have less resources to go around, the people on the field are always tempted to play God with the few resources that are available. So you're like, no, I am the custodian of these resources. And since everybody can't get there, I decide to choose, and how I choose is best. So I think somehow all of them actually contribute to make power less likely if they're available. Yep.
All right. So what's your final answer?
So, you know, the other thing about full funding, making power, what makes abuse of power less likely? Once there is the money, funds, basically, money has a way of making power, making one abuse power. It's a two-way thing. It depends on how you're seeing it, but I think that money has a way of making people abuse. So you could have full funding, and because of that, you also could now begin to abuse that authority, or that the resources given you. For example, you tend to say, okay, who gets a job, for example. That's also abuse of power, because you have funding to recruit now. But I also would, and so I think that it's two-way. There's also a part where if you do not have enough funding, you are not able to put also enough systems in place, to check. So I think it's two-way, but in this context, I think I would still go, I don't know, we need to agree on this quickly, 1 to 5, between 1, but I'll still go for 1 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aisha and Sarah, you have the deciding vote.
From Melissa's explanation, I go with all of the above. From that explanation.
Okay. Aisha, what do you think?
I go with 1 to 5.
Yeah.
We are splitted. We need to choose.
Now we need to choose.
Let's pick all of them. Let's see.
Okay.
It's an opportunity to learn. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that attitude. What does our audience say? Oh, let's see. Okay, so everything except there's a bit of wavering on the last one. Let's see what the correct answer is according to the Game Master. All right. So now I've seen a lot of pushback in the chat as well about full funding. If you don't have full funding, you have to make cuts, and a lot of times organizations cut accountability and safeguarding. So we see the impact of shortfalls on funding. However, from our research, we've seen when your organizations have had major misconduct, some of them have been more than fully funded, and the finances were being misspent. But I'm sure that we can debate the answer in going forward. So well played, JDF. Let's go to the next question. Concern. Organizational culture does not include A, values, B, behaviors, C, mindsets, D, yeast.
Well, I'm glad we got an easier question than the last one. Yeah, I think it's probably yeast, unless we're going back to the menu and having nice food for the board meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, is that your final answer?
Yeah, I see everybody nodding there. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the audience. Yeast. Okay, let's see the correct answer. Nice. Excellent job to Concern. Now, I am encouraging everyone in our audience to participate. We're going to show the leaderboard very soon to see who in the audience has been most actively on target. Let's go back to JDF for the next question. Okay, this is a bit complicated. Now, in the core humanitarian standard, there are more than 60 indicators that we can look at, and more than a dozen are clearly connected to power, culture, and well-being. And here are two examples. There's a culture of open communication, that's indicator 4.5, and welcoming feedback and complaints, indicator 5.2. Now, we asked Adrienne, our colleague in the Secretariat, to look at the data from the last 3 years, sector-wide, How do you think we are doing with regard to these two indicators? Sector-wide, no or only anecdotal efforts are being made? B, systematic efforts are made and show results, but improvement is still possible. Or C, the work is done and the sector is doing all as it should. What do you think?
So I think I would go with B. I would go with B. I think that it keeps for example, I would use the example in the situation in Nigeria. The humanitarian crisis keeps it's kind of dynamic. It keeps shifting. So you need to evolve and you need to strategize time after time on how to meet the emerging needs and how to better be able to ensure that you are accountable at all levels. So I would say that efforts are in place and we have some results, but of course there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room for developing new strategies and better approaches. For me, I don't know if Aisha, Sarah, and said, but I think that I'll go with B.
I am with you on this one.
Okay.
B. The same, yeah.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was I don't know. I was trying to weigh this actually properly, and I know that efforts are being made. But I also think from the initial presentations that were made, it seems that even though the efforts were being made, they didn't even cross the threshold where we were looking at them to cross. It's like the efforts are so little. It seems a lot is being done, but from the assessments and the feedback, it seems nothing much is actually happening. I don't know how to explain that. So now this is a tough choice.
Let's go with B.
Okay, let the majority take the win. Okay.
All right, we got your answer. Systematic efforts are made and show results, but improvement is still possible. What do our audience members say? Yes, they agree with you. And the right answer is that one. Excellent, well done. But I do sympathize with you. It sometimes feel like nothing is moving. But when we actually look at the data, we do see progress. It's just hard to see. Back to concern. Blank is a statement of principles and values, sets the expectations and standards for behavior. A LinkedIn profile, an about section on your website, or a code of conduct? Which do you think?
A code of conduct.
Agreed.
Code of conduct, 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Final answer?
Yeah.
D. Okay, let's see what the audience says. Yes, they agree with you, and that is the right answer. Yes, well done. Code of conduct is something that we're very interested in. We have a code of conduct toolkit, and we're very interested in looking at the importance of living our values. And that's a good place to look. Back to JDF, the primary reason why there isn't more reporting of misconduct is A, the lack of know-how. We don't know how to report misconduct. B, broken systems. Our systems aren't working. Or C, their fear of negative consequences. This answer comes from some of the recent CHS Alliance research on whistleblowing. What would you think?
I think that the three actually are reasons why reporting is really minimal. But of course, I will say the primary reason for me, if I'm to prioritize, is the lack of the know-how. Because if you do not understand what to do when you have an issue, then you are not able to report it at all. So I think that the lack of knowledge is one of the major reasons, the primary reasons why reporting is minimal?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fear of negative consequences. Because some will really want to report, but this fear will not. Yes. Good. I don't know for Sarah and Seth.
Wow. Okay.
So I think, like Kinsley said, all of them actually contribute, but the question is the primary reason. So we should agree on what we think the primary reason is.
Reason.
Yeah, so
Lack of know-how.
Sarah, I think I would go with Aisha on this, fear of negative consequences. Yeah. So you know, actually, the thing is, a lot of these systems are in place, and then we have the sensitizations and awareness, and these things are happening. But you discover that, a lot of time is the snapback from the reporting or the fear of the snapback. You're always thinking, okay, if I report, then what? Especially if the person that is responsible for this is someone at the higher levels. So you feel that if you do this, then it might come about you losing your job, or in the case of a beneficiary, losing the aid that you're receiving and things like that. And from experience also, we know that a lot of times persons that abuse power, one of the grounds they stand on is to tell you that, look, if you dare say anything about this, then you're going to lose your access to this aid that is coming. So I think I'll go with Aisha for 3.
Kingsley.
Okay. Yeah. We can go with 3.
Okay, we're going with you guys. Final answer, fear of negative consequences.
All right, let's see what our audience had to say. Okay, they agree with you. And the correct answer to the MIT, we could show the correct answer. It is the fear of negative. We're cheering fear. No, this is it's very striking in the research Harbinder Kaur presented with Colleen Rapnoe in her webinar looking at the research. People fear what will happen if the system is broken and their identity is revealed in the wrong way. Will I lose my job? Will our organization lose its funding? There are all kinds of potential consequences that people fear. And in that way, organizational culture is really important. That people have a psychological safety. If I report misconduct, I won't be retaliated against. I actually be appreciated because I'm helping the organization to learn and improve and address issues that are there. Culture, it was fantastic. Cognizant of time, let's go to the next question. To concern. Oh, we've got a leaderboard. Fantastic. So we see Lauren, Anne, and Subhalaxmi are all 10 out of 10. Well done. We've also got Anne France Van de Poo and Sylvia doing well. So we're going to see how that changes in the next few questions before we wrap up. What can a staff member do to prevent harm? Choose the wrong answer. This is to concern. Should they tell everyone they know that they have a concern? Should they behave in line with the code of conduct? Should they report concerns in a safe and confidential way? Should they ask questions if policies and procedures are not clear? What do you think is the wrong answer here?
Just to tell everyone they have a concern.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because instead you would report in a safe and confidential way, not tell everybody.
Other thoughts from our concern team?
I agree, because the rest of the others help us to prevent harm. I mean, that is behaving in line with the code of conduct. If you do that, then you'll be out of harm's way. If you report concerns in a safe and confidential way, you'll be preventing harm. And if you ask questions about unclear policies and procedures so that those are clarified, then you'll also be helping in preventing harm. So telling everyone you have a concern is the wrong answer.
All right, so we got an answer?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what the audience says. Oh, they agree. Let's see what the answer is correctly. Okay, very well. Yes, it's a very delicate situation. Reporting to the correct channels is really important. Keeping information close hold if needed is really important. So well done. We have 20 questions planned, but for the sake of time, I want to open back conversations. Can you remind me who was the first team?
We were concerned.
Was concerned. Okay, so you've had, so if we do one more concern question, one more JDF question, you'd have equal chances, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one more JDF. We've had, yeah.
You had it. Okay, so let's
Concern just answered.
Pardon?
So concerned were the ones that answered the last question. So
okay.
if you, yeah, if
so we'll
JDF
just go to
answers
JDF
this,
and then we'll be wrapping up. What can a leader do to prevent harm? Choose the wrong answer. Model appropriate behavior. Ask team members how they're preventing harm. Dedicate time and resources to harm prevention. Nothing, just hope for the best. Welcome and act on complaints and ask for help. What should a leader not do to prevent harm?
Nothing.
Nothing. Let's just hope for the best. We should
Let's
hope
hope
for
for
the
the best.
best. I think we should hope for the best in this one. Aisha and Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think nothing. Nothing is worst all the time.
So we are just hoping for the
Nothing.
best there.
Okay, final answer? Nothing, just
Yeah.
hope for the best?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what the audience says. The audience says they're leaving us in suspense.
Sorry, Melissa, it's just coming through, just being a bit slow.
Oh, no worries. Okay. It's coming.
It's coming. Sorry. There you go.
That's okay.
It's coming,
Nothing.
it's coming,
Just
it's
hope for the
coming.
best.
Oh, it has come.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's here.
fantastic. So, Russell, I would like to end the questions here because I want to save time for reflection. If you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Can we ask our colleague Sharina? Sharina, are you around? Have you been keeping score? I can't see Sharina. We can take off the Slido from this. Oh, well, we should leave the Slido on for just 1 minute.
I'm just hoping that Sharina wasn't keeping scores and then we'll just end at a draw.
End at a draw. Okay,
Yeah.
Where's Sharina?
Oh, Sharina, please don't show up. Please don't. Please don't.
Sharina
Well,
is in a meeting, Melissa. I've just asked her to unmute.
Yay!
Oh, okay, so Sharina was not keeping score. How about we pull up the leaderboard?
Hello, Melissa. Hi.
Oh, hi, Sharina.
Oh my God, Sharina has appeared.
You jumped ahead of me there.
Were you paying attention?
Yeah, well, I have it that it was a wonderful draw and both teams are the winners. Is that what you recollect?
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Let's see what our leaderboard says for the audience.
Just bear with me one moment, Melissa. I'm just trying to bring it up. Just because we've moved it forwards. So just bear with me 1 second.
Okay, no worries. So I want to, as we're pulling up the leaderboard, open up to first the teams, then the audience, and then I want to turn back to Faye, because Faye and I have a lot of interest in organizational culture. So I want to see what she thinks. But to the team members, what did you feel during the game? What was it like to have a team dynamic versus an individual? JDF, do you want to say anything first? Uwe pointed out you got the harder questions. So even in the game, the deck was stacked against you because you had harder questions.
So I think for us, it was actually a learning time, and then in the discussions, it gave room for weighing your options. and seeing different perspectives. So you have probably me saying that, no, I think this is what it should be, and Kingsley bringing a whole new perspective. And oh, yeah, I think you're correct. Another person, so we were able to balance thoughts and able to arrive at an answer that we felt did justice from all perspectives. So it was more of a collaborative effort, and I think it teaches us something on how there should be this collaborative spirit, this collaborative effort, even within organizations as we address the commitment to CHS.
Brilliant, that's lovely. Anyone else from JDF want to add on that? How about concern? How did it feel to you to play the game as a team versus as an individual?
Maybe I'll start. I think certainly from me, you know, I suppose when the five of us would not normally work together, so I think coming together with people maybe you don't really know, but at the same time it takes the pressure off that it's not just you alone, that there are, and even if you might think a different way, then you have your colleagues that will come in, and I like the different perspectives and the explanations behind the answers. So I think it is definitely would allow, I know we didn't have a lot of time, but if there was more time, the basis for a discussion, I think, around the questions. And I do agree, maybe our questions were a little bit more straightforward, so there probably wasn't as much discussion required. But that was maybe my other team members might have other perspectives there.
Thank you so much. And we have a comment in the chat, and there are comments earlier about the phrasing of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, Lauren is saying the previous question seems to put the pressure on a right way of reporting, and that could potentially silence people. So who had the power in this game? It was me, because I wrote the questions, I decided the answers. I had people in the secretariat feeding in to the questions, and we did a rehearsal and we vetted to each other, but it's also a kind of like a meta consideration, like who is deciding the rules of the game and what is right, what is wrong. There are a lot of times it's not so clear cut what is right and wrong there. So fantastic that you all noticed that. I'd like to offer an opportunity to others who are participating. Thank you so much for participating as audience members. Are there any reflections you have on this game, and also the case study we did at the beginning, looking at a whole of organization approach? Anyone want to share a reflection? You can put up your hand, or you can add in the chat.
Just while we wait for that, Melissa, just so you know, I've got the leaderboard up on Slido ready to share as well.
Go ahead. Congratulations to Lauren, Anne, and Subhak Halaksmi. Well done. Well done. So I can't see anymore. My screen has suddenly disappeared. So who else would like to say something with regard to what we might have learned or reflected on from the game? Do you think it's useful?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. So I think that from the game, one of the things that as we talk about accountability is the fact that there needs to be conversations. Sometimes we focus more on accountability to maybe the donors or within, and we forget about, like I saw in the chat box, someone from CARE said forward accountability, and we forget about the very reason why we are talking about accountability, which is about the people in need, the people we work for. And so when we talk about accountability, there is need to have conversations with those that are directly affected by the conflicts, or those that we are serving, to know, how do you want us to approach this? What methods are better? What methods are more human for you, are more realistic for you? You know, there need to be that conversation at all times, so that you do not introduce a system that will bring more harm than good. So I think that there needs to be a conversation, especially with the people in need, the people we serve, to know what best suits them to arrive at a better answer, just as we had conversations here and we're able to choose the correct answers. It's very important to have conversations with the people in need, as we talk about accountability, to be able to arrive at the best solutions, the best innovative solutions that are culturally sensitive, solutions that do not breach any societal standards at their level, else it might be rejected or it might not even be used at all. So for me, this is something that I just reflected over. Thank you.
So much. Anyone else want to share their reflection before we hand over? So I did want to just say to you that we are going to create something called a culture community, which is a space for us to continue the conversation on changing our experience of power, organizational culture, and well-being in aid organizations. I have just put in the chat a registration to the link on Zoom if you'd like to participate. We will meet once a month for 90 minutes, and each 90-minute session we'll hear from one organization that some of the things they're experiencing, and then we'll also work on something together. So there's already an interest in looking at operationalizing values. So we'll be hearing from one of our members at that meeting on October 11th. And the next meeting we'll be looking at the CHS revision using a power culture lens to see what more specifically can be done to strengthen that there. So if you don't mind, if you'd like to be part of the forward-looking conversations, you're welcome to join there. I'd like to invite Faye. Faye, what did you think about this session? Did anything come to your mind? Because you're working very much on organizational development, organizational learning, organizational culture. What do you think?
Yeah, Melissa, first of all, I'm going to hire you for one of our RavelWorks conferences with the team game. So I loved it. That's already good. But Melissa, we talked about it actually last week or the week before, and I liked what you said just now about operationalizing values. What the humanitarian and INGO and development community does not have a problem with is coming up with beautiful policy documents, nice statements, values of respect, integrity, accountability, and I mean, we can list everything in the English vocabulary and then translate it into Arabic, French, and Spanish, and as we do. But when we talk about some of the issues that you've just mentioned around safeguarding, abuse of power, counterproductive workplace behavior, etc., it's not the policy, it's not the document, it's not the flow chart which shows where you report the email and which board member will receive the complaint, but it's on the individual level, Melissa, like we said, and it's the choice of choosing courage over comfort. Everybody on this call knows when a behavior is uncalled for, it is disrespectful, it is not right, but what we do is we choose to say nothing. Because, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. Oh, but Melissa has been with CHS for a long time, so she really understands the donors. So let's leave. We make all of these kind of excuses around, well, it's not really my job. I'm not the project manager. And I've heard them all in my career as HR director for various different INGOs. But that's really where the problem starts, right? Is by us choosing comfort and choosing to be quiet. And so the way I like to think about it very often is if you as an individual are not calling things out and speaking about these things, or in other words, if you're not part of the solution, you are the problem. It's not calling in a consultant to redo the PSEA policy, which will sort out the issue. So that's my reflection on the whole thing. It's not just about PSEA or safeguarding, but in general, I think each one of us, if we just take 3 minutes to step back and we say, I know this is off. There is a problem here, and I might not be the country director or deputy director or whatever operations director, but I do still have a voice. Where I can flag something and talk about it. So I'm excited that you have this culture community. I'd be very interested to join some of them and hear particularly about how values are being operationalized, but also what organizations are doing over and beyond the policy and the papers, because that's one we can Google. I want to know what's happening live. How are you addressing or calling out certain behaviors? That is, Melissa, sorry, that's the Nigerian energy coming into the room now. I do apologize. I will be quiet now.
No, Faye, you're just hitting ding, 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 lots of chats, echoing what you have to say, reinforcing what you have to say. I think you'd be more than welcome in the culture community. We want to hear from people who've been thinking about these things from different perspectives. We want to be inclusive, want to be diverse, and we want to practice what we preach there and learn from each other. So before I finalize this and hand over to you, Faye, I have to thank you hugely to the 3 members and their teams who joined us for the session today. It was a bit of an odd request to say, come and come and join this game and tell us your story of our organization. So huge thanks to Carol, to Durance, to Kate, Mashumi, and Rosalind from the Concern organization, from JDF Kingsley, Sarah, Aisha, Emmanuel, Seth, and World Vision, Anne-Marie Connor, Justin Byworth, Alicia Nissan. Thank you so much for joining us so much. Thank you so much to our interpreters. Look at this, it's very hard work. We want to thank you for your time. And we also want to thank Sharina, who is our scorekeeper, to Yasmina, who helped us behind the scenes to do this, to Faye, who helped us going through the whole CHS exchange, and to manage your time. It's been really great working with you all. We want to see you and continue this conversation. Back to you, Faye.